The Pioneer Girl Project is a research and publishing program of the South Dakota State Historical Society that is designed to study and publish a comprehensive edition of Laura Ingalls Wilder's Pioneer Girl, which is her autobiography. Laura Ingalls Wilder was an amazing person. She was a woman who, how do you start with Laura? Who is Laura Ingalls Wilder? Oh, she was this 2-year-old kid who came out to the Kansas frontier in 1869 and spent the next 16 years of her life on various parts of the American frontier. Then, as an adult, Laura Ingalls Wilder moved to Missouri, started a career in farm journalism, wrote weekly columns for the local newspaper on how to get hens to lay eggs and all kinds of things like that. And when she was 63 years old, she wrote her autobiography. And then in 1932, she published her first book. Well, she's best known for the Little House series of books, which are these 8 books about her childhood, starting with Little House in the Big Woods. Actually, the second book was about her husband's childhood, and that's Farmer Boy. And then her third book is when she kind of launched this concept of doing the history of the frontier in multiple volumes. Her third book is probably, in many ways, her best known book. It was Little House on the Prairie. That was the name of the television series that ran from like 1974 to into the 80s. And then the fourth book is On the Banks of Plum Creek, By the Shores of Silver Lake, The Long Winter, Little Town on the Prairie, and These Happy Golden Years. And they tell her story of her family pioneering as a settler on the frontiers, the western frontiers of America. Laura Ingalls Wilder's books have been translated into, I think, upwards of 60 languages. They've sold billions of copies. They're very influential in our culture. They tell the quintessential American pioneering journey. So when I started the South Dakota Biography series, I knew that I wanted to do a book on Laura Ingalls Wilder. So I commissioned it from Pamela Smith Hill, who is herself a writer of young adult fiction. And I thought, well, that's a good point of view on Wilder. One you don't necessarily always get from a historian's point of view. And she would say to me, you know, Nancy, there is The Pioneer Girl, which had never been published. It was her autobiography. It just had languished in these archives for years. And she said, but I think there's a market for that, or I think people are interested in that. You know, eventually we just decided, okay, let's see if we can get the rights to publish that. Let's put together a proposal, which we did, and then I took that proposal to the Little House Heritage Trust, which is the guardian of Wilder's literary properties. And it took about a year's worth of negotiations, but they said, okay, yeah, you can we'll give you the permission to do that. And I think it was more than permission. It was also a privilege and something that we had to look at seriously. One of the first questions we had to decide was, okay, Pioneer Girl, the manuscript of Pioneer Girl exists in at least 5 different formats. You've got the handwritten first draft, and then she's got 3 typescripts that come off of that are full-length manuscripts. And then there's a children's manuscript at the end called Juvenile Pioneer Girl. So we had to figure out what we were going to do, and we decided that we would go with the handwritten original because that was the closest to Wilder's original voice. Well, the first thing that had to be done is the manuscript had to be transcribed because it was a handwritten manuscript. And so we spent, I don't even know how long, transcribing that, proofreading it, figuring out the foibles of the manuscript because there were many, you know, it was the era before type computers. So that she wrote that manuscript. So if she wanted to amend it without redoing it, she had to do it in a non-technological way. You know, she used tape, for example, or she used pins. She literally took stick pins and pinned pieces of corrections together and stuck them in, or pinned them to the page before. She wrote in between lines. So we studied the manuscript. If you look at, why is the book so big? That's one of the questions, you know, with the dimensions of why is the book so big? It's because it's set up to be annotated. So that means that you have Wilder's text here. This is the original text, and then footnotes based on things that we decided needed to be annotated. So you've got notes here in this column, and of course, as you can see, what we had to say, or what the questions that the text brought out, you know, were bigger than the text itself. So the notes extend over on a couple of pages. So it was a matter of figuring out all the pieces and you know, but at the same time, not letting our notes overwhelm the text, which happened at times. You know, we'd have like a 1,300 word annotation for a 3-word sentence or a 5-word sentence, and then there's 1,300 words. Well, you have to shrink that down to make it workable. Much as I wanted to go home, I did not want to be unfair nor deceitful. I was only going with him for the sake of being home over Sunday, and fully intended to stop as soon as my school was out. So that's what Wilder wrote. But what that brought to mind for us was this. Wilder's phrase, home over Sunday, used here for the second time, and the situation she described in Pioneer Girl, inspired Lane's, Mrs. Rose Wilder Lane, her daughter's, short story called Home Over Saturday. Published in the Saturday Evening Post on September 11, 1937, Lane's story fictionalized her mother's experiences with the Buccis and her father's weekend rescues that brought Wilder home over Saturday. These same elements provide the tension in chapters 2 through 10 of These Happy Golden Years, the last novel published in Wilder's lifetime. But the more interesting graphics in some way are things like this, which is Wilder's drawing of DeSmet and how DeSmet worked. And so she's trying to help her daughter, Rose Wilder Lane, who is her editor, figure out how the town works. So she draws this picture of it, which we used in the original. And then just last week, I became aware that there's 2 more copies of this very same drawing. And this is a rough draft of the little town on the prairie manuscript. I just didn't realize it was there. And it says, very pointedly on it, to her daughter Rose, please don't lose this. It is the 3rd map I have drawn. Actually, I was in New York, and my staff called me and said, "We're on the New York Times bestseller list," and we were pretty excited, and we were getting congratulations from all over. We were also getting a lot of attention. There were people interested in were there film rights, and what about this kind of right and that kind of right, and so it opened up a whole new world of conversations with presses and people. It was fairly overwhelming for us at times, but something that has made our future in many ways, because we were able to ride that wave, and it's going to pay. It's going to pay its way through time and help us do our mission. The next project of the Pioneer Girl Project is already out, and it's called Pioneer Girl Perspectives Exploring Laura Ingalls Wilder. And what this is, we knew that we were going to continue our exploration of Laura Ingalls Wilder's texts. One of the things that the success of Pioneer Girl, the annotated autobiography, did was it allowed us to think more comprehensively about what the Pioneer Girl Project was doing. And what we decided we wanted to do was really look at those texts and start to answer some of those questions about what kind of an editor was Rose Wilder Lane. What kind of a memory did Laura Ingalls Wilder have? To what extent was that memory supplemented by her daughter's work? And this is just on the nonfiction aspects of it. And then you move into fiction, and how did that daughter, editor, agent lead her mother into fiction, and what were the roles of the two women? So that's what we decided that we would do, and study all the texts that generate, or a piece of which is in Pioneer Girl, the autobiography. So that's our future. You know, I want the takeaway to be that I suppose that history can be fun, that we don't understand as a reading public, we don't understand the role of authors and editors, that most good authors have good editors, and so that's what I would like the takeaway from the project to be, is to see that the story, the voice, the writer here is Laura Ingalls Wilder, and the editor, who was very talented at what she did, is Rose Wilder Lane. And I think those lines get blurred and confused, partly because we don't talk to enough editors. We don't know what it is that they really do. And I think we should rectify that.